Hello everyone, Sonic Yoda from SEGADriven here, and we've just attended the first day of EGX, or Eurogamer Expo as we used to know. Apparently, Eurogamer Expo is far too many syllables for the average game-playing individual to handle. So yeah, EGX it is now. So here's the first of our previews. We're going to be talking about Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric on Wii U, which we had some hands-on time with today. Now, interesting one this, because there were 3 stages available to play. A action-orientated stage, a boss battle, and a speed stage. Now, we only played the boss battle and the speed stage for reasons of, I didn't want to hold up too many people behind me. But there you go. So first off, let's talk about the speed stage. This was actually over very, very quickly, which was quite surprising. So this plays almost identically to the speed stages in Sonic Lost World, where you are always moving, always travelling forwards. And you control all 4 characters at once. But here's one of the things. At no point did I feel like I actually needed to change to a different character. Sonic was doing the job just fine. I was blasting through. And yeah, it controls very similarly to the Sonic games that you've been familiar with as of recent. So there were quick steps on the triggers, which meant that you could dodge in and out of obstacles coming up towards you on the track. You had your standard jumps, and I don't think I needed to homing attack actually, because I don't think there were any enemies to fight. But the new thing that they've added is this sort of laser whip thing that allows you to attach to certain objects. I can't remember what the bloody name of the thing is now. But it does have a name, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. But yeah, so there are certain parts in the track where you will launch off a loop or something like that, and off a ramp and things. And to continue, you'd have to use this lasery whip thing to then attach onto a skyline that will whip you around. And in those sections as well, you can move the character at different angles to collect rings. And it's all very sort of... when you're hanging from rails in Sonic Adventure 2, that's what it reminds me of. It's those sort of on-track hanging rail sections, basically, is what I'm trying to get at. So yeah, those are that was that. It controlled okay for what it was. It was a speed section. It was over very quickly, and it was pretty well made. The controls aren't as tight as Lost World, I've got to say. It definitely feels a little bit more, what's the word, ragged, I suppose. It's just not as well formed. I mean, it doesn't help that Sonic Lost World ran in 60 FPS and this runs in 30, so maybe that's, taking the edge off it slightly. But yeah, it's definitely not as, something strikes me as not as consistent as the previous game. Anyway, so let's talk about the boss now. So the boss battle was with Dr. Robotnik, or Dr. Eggman, and he was in his little Egomatic implanted into a mech suit, and you had to fight him. So the mech suit would often sort of leap into the air and ground pound, and you had to avoid the shockwave. Very typical boss fare. But the thing that you had to do to attack him was intermittently Robotnik would launch missiles out of his back, and you had to use the laser whip to then catch them and throw them back at him. And then when you got him into a point where you could basically, you get him into a point where he was sort of dazed, I suppose, and then all 4 characters at once would attack him with their laser whips and pull him to the ground. And at that point was when you went up to the Egomatic and started punching the shit out of him. Now, that was a really bizarre thing to see, actually, because it was obviously very action-orientated, and I'm not particularly used to that in a Sonic game. But yeah, all characters were in there, like, punching the bloody thing, and it was all right. The combat's pretty decent for what it is. It's very sort of just bash one button. But yeah, that's when things changed. After the first time you do that, Robotnik changes his tactics a little bit. He still launches missiles and ground pounds and stuff, but he gets a little bit more aggressive. But the thing that I really didn't like was they started chucking in lots of other smaller enemies for you to be distracted by. So they would be attacking you at the same time that Robotnik's attacking you in the mech suit. So there's an awful lot going on at any given point in that boss battle, and I just think the enemies were a bit of a distraction more than anything else. And the combat's okay, it works, but it is very much bash one button, wait for the thing to die. It's not as, you know, deep as something like Bayonetta, for instance. I don't think it was never going to be, because this is obviously a kids game, but it functions, but it doesn't feel solid. It doesn't feel smooth. It's very clunky. It's got to be said. That's the impressions I got from the combat in particular. And sadly, I didn't play the main sort of action-focused stage, because I'd like to see. I think that makes up the bulk of the game, those stages, from what I'm told. And I didn't really ever feel the need to change characters at any given point, despite the fact that I had 3 other characters I could play with. I stayed as Sonic, and there was no incentive for me to change to a different character at any given point. So yeah, that's a bit disappointing. It's got to be said. They haven't really designed the game around this multiple character thing that they're pushing. So yeah, there's that. So I think I'm going to have to go back to it again tomorrow. Give the action stage a go, because I didn't play that one, and you know, there was a queue behind me, and I didn't want to particularly spend, you know, 20 odd minutes going through all 3 stages. I'd rather move on and do something else. So yeah, those speed stages and that speed stage and the boss battle, I can't say I'm thoroughly impressed. It's got to be said. It felt very average. It felt like what I've been saying it looked like, in that it kind of looks like one of those sort of annual kids Ben 10 games that just sort of gets pumped out. So it's very, very basic action orientated game, and not really any platforming from those 2 stages whatsoever. Obviously there wasn't going to be much of a boss stage, but for instance the speed stage was all sort of, it was like being on rails. It was just on a, you know, you just blasted through on a track and not a lot happened. So there you go, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, coming out soon, and not great impressions, it's got to be said. Anyway, that's enough of that. Thank you very much for tuning in. I've been Sonic Yoda from Sega Driven. You've been watching the Sega Driven YouTube channel, and this is our EGX coverage. Coming up next, we have Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal. Tune in.